Okay, recording. Hello and welcome. This is Permission to Heal. I am Marcy Brockman and I am here today with Justice Bartlett. Justice and I have been friends for a little over a year now. We met through Elephant Journal Writing Academy last fall, and she just captured my heart. Justice is passionate about communication and finds renewal wandering in the mountains and spending time with her sweet pug Grommet. He's adorable. As a healer and hypnotherapist, Justice does not put people into a trance. She takes them out, and she does it with presence, with kindness, and heart-won wisdom. Helping people rediscover their inherent innocence, courage, and creativity as they heal from pain and trauma is her service to this tired, hungry world. With her words, she tells stories that touch the core threads of humanity and that let us all feel and heal together. Justice is a mother and a newly made grandmother, a very delightfully adorable grandbaby. As a recovered addict, she also understands what it takes to heal, grow, and mature as a person, and she brings that compassion through her words and work with others. Justice has 15 years working in the healing industry and works with people all over the world. Her main clientele is often professional healers, but anyone can learn and benefit from her playfully conscious process. Welcome, Justice. I'm so happy that you're here.
Hi, Marcy. It's great to be with you.
I'm so glad. So yeah, this has been some wild, crazy journey we've been on the last year or so.
I can't believe it's only been just a little over a year. So much has happened, right?
Absolutely. The whole world has turned upside down and changed every single aspect of it. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It's
And
kind of
you
crazy.
wrote and completed your book, which I
I
am just in
did.
awe of you of doing.
Thank you. Yeah, that
Seriously.
was the purpose of the Elephant Journal journey. I mean, I'd been writing for them off and on since 2015, mostly off, but it's there. And then I saw the ad for their academy, and I'm like, that's going to be the impetus I need to actually stick to a writing schedule and get this done.
Nice.
And it worked. It was good. This yesterday, a year ago, I finished the first draft.
Wow.
So
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So yeah, so here we are with the Permission to Heal podcast, which is an offshoot of Permission to Land. We get to work through all of our healing journeys and talk about all of the things that makes us so uniquely human and connects us all together. So that's why I thought it was absolutely necessary to have you on the show with us. So I'm glad
Thank
that you're
you.
here. I spent a bit of time going through your website over the weekend. It had been a while since I had been there. Playfully conscious. It's so cool.
Illumination with justice.
Oh, right. I
Actually.
did it wrong even. So
That's okay.
Illumination with justice. Right. What a fabulous name to have for your name and for the business. So on the website, it says that you provide playful, compassionate, guided trauma repatterning. That sounds really fascinating to me, but I have no idea what that is. How does that benefit trauma survivors? Can you walk us through that briefly?
So it's a very organic process, really. I think the primary thing that people need in order to begin to heal is safety and rapport.
Sure.
So I do just a lot of listening and holding space in the way where there's a depth of emotional recognition that passes between myself and the client. And then I invite them to become more attentive with their body. And I use somewhat of a somatic practice to guide people into whatever is ready in them to be acknowledged and discovered and healed. So people may come with an agenda and a specific set desired outcomes or a specific trauma or a specific addiction. But what always happens is the body and the psyche combined show us what it is that's generating the trance, as I like to call it, the discomfort, the addiction, the adaptation.
Okay.
The way I was trained in hypnotherapy is that whatever it is that is creating confusion or disharmony in our life, that is the trance, which is why I say I don't put people in trance, I take them out.
That makes sense.
So our journey together is into a more enlivened, genuine state of wakefulness and authenticity, truly. Um, and the process of that is conversation, asking questions, waking up instincts, letting intuition speak, listening to stories and memories.
That's very cool. Do
And
you,
editing. It's like, I love it so much because going through the editing training with Elephant, right? Waylon was always like, be more specific. Well, I do that to my clients now to like really help us like take apart and get to the core of like their patterns and their stories. It's like,
hone
I
in?
think I understand what you mean, but can you please be more specific?
Nice. Do you hear your voice in your head or Waylon's?
I hear my voice now, but for a long time I heard Waylon's voice saying all kinds of things.
That's funny. Now, do you ever find that like somebody would come into uh into an appointment with you with one agenda, and then their psyche or their body takes them in another direction where they think that they're going to address one thing and it turned out to be something else?
It does happen, but usually there are common threads between what the body shows them and what their surface desire is. It's like the surface desire. So say a person comes with like, recently I had somebody come who was ready to stop smoking, and he had tried to quit multiple times over the years. And it's like, okay, this is my agenda, quit smoking. Will you hypnotize me to get rid of that? I'm actually more interested in what that activity represents, what it symbolizes for you, why it's important, and why you feel like you need it. So we start going through, and like the story that came out was like, it was, he watched his father do it, and his father had this air of mystery, and he wasn't in his life very much. And then he, as a teenager, he was using it as a means of bonding and all this stuff. So it's like he became aware of the need that it was showing him. And he became aware also simultaneously of like the resistance of quitting and giving up all of those things that it symbolized.
So if he
So
finds another way to get that connection and that belonging that doesn't involve nicotine, then it might make it easier to stop smoking.
absolutely, you meet the need and the neuroses goes away, is what the bottom line is.
I should talk to you about my emotional eating.
I work with a lot of people about that, actually.
In the middle of it, my therapist just is like, you know what? Give yourself a break. Wait till the pandemic is over and the major crisis is not a daily thing for you, and then address it. Don't try to quit a behavior in the middle of stress. So
That's really compassionate advice, because if you look at that behavior as a coping mechanism instead
yeah,
of something that's self-destructive, then you get to be so much more gentle with yourself, right?
yeah, it's a total coping mechanism. And it's not like it's so totally unhealthy. I do have a limit and I do stop myself. But, last weekend I did sit down and eat an entire box of Malamars by myself. So, oh well, I did feel better.
Was it good at least?
It was delicious. Oh my God.
So good.
It was so good. So it worked. I felt better. It was delicious. It was all fine. And, I felt guilty afterwards, but not so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So much of what you write about just is so heart and soul centered. And you've got such a clear, kind, passionate and patient voice in the things that you write. I have this like image of you sort of like naked and flying through the woods, just like wide open, wings unfurled, it's just not all the things, but some of them.
That's fantastic.
So you wrote in an article recently, I'm going to read you to you, if that's okay.
Okay.
In an article called Why We Have to Learn to Hold Space for Our Sad and Broken and Disowned Parts, you wrote, a society that marks worthiness by the level of exhaustion a person can endure has lost touch with true service. And I thought, she's talking to me. As a chronically tired workaholic overachiever, this resonates with me like I can't tell you. Like somehow American women, society has like bamboozled us into feeling like we're not fulfilling our womanly destinies if we're not spending all of our energy in service to others, caretaking, and we're working and we're managing the households and raising the children and grocery shopping and cooking and cleaning and feeding the cats and all this other stuff, having sex for other husbands, every possible thing. And oh, by the way, don't ask for anything for yourself. Feel guilty if you
Mhm.
want to go to the gym, or you want to meditate, or you want to do some yoga, or go out with your girlfriends, or take a walk. Like it took me until I was in my early 40s to figure out that I was allowed to carve time out for myself, that it was even a necessity so that I could do the rest of those other things. So anyway,
Mm.
now that I just blabbed, I would like you to talk about that.
I
I'm
love
sure you
hearing
have a
you.
perspective.
I love hearing you say that, and I think Glennon Doyle's book. She's been
Untamed. It was fabulous.
Untamed. Yeah, that was a really good one. I love how Brene Brown also talks about it. Men and Women in Worthiness was one of the ones that really left a mark on me.
Yeah.
And the kind of addiction that we have with our self-worth being tied to our productivity is a result of living in a capitalist society that has infiltrated our psyches to the deepest level. We don't believe we deserve to rest. We think that we have to be producing something all of the time,
Right.
and it's terrible for us. The term chronic fatigue, it's like time. It's being exhausted over and through time, and that exhaustion being like our vitality, our precious life's blood and energy being doled out to things that are too goddamn mundane to fucking breathe for.
Right.
It's like if we're exhausting ourselves with our passions, we're exhausting ourselves with our love of life, with caring for the things that matter to us. That's a different kind of exhaustion. That's the kind of exhaustion where you fall into bed at night, and on a few hours of sleep you go down and out and you dream and
Mm-hmm.
you restore yourself, and you come back to life the next morning and you have the energy and passion and enthrallment to do it again. The
Right.
kind of exhaustion that most people are dealing with is the kind where their minds never shut off, where they
Right.
truly never rest, where they never get restoration, and where even in their downtime they're thinking about what they should be doing.
Right.
That is an unfortunate kind of exhaustion, and that's the kind that makes us just soul tired, soul weary, and I think depressed. I think that's where the depression comes from, and for some of us anxiety comes from. Is it's the misuse of our energy. Our energy gets all wrapped up in these
Yeah.
things that are non-essential, that we're not taking care of our needs. And our body, our psyche, our soul, soma goes, you're gonna
It's gonna
pause.
collapse eventually.
You're gonna stop right there, or you're gonna have like a complete breakdown later. So do you want to pick up the pieces as you go along, or do you want to like really fully fall apart and like be
Wind
like
up
a
in the hospital.
yeah, wind up in the hospital, wind up with some unfortunate disease or condition. We
Because we feel
don't,
that in our bodies systemically.
we know
It
it,
affects
right?
everything. Absolutely. Absolutely. I had to train myself to not multitask everything. Like there was a point where I was so busy, constantly, always thinking about the next thing that I had to do, multitasking, compartmentalizing every single thing in my brain. And it was all on all the time.
Yeah.
And like I couldn't even sit down and watch a half-hour TV show with my kids and enjoy that, because I always had something else in my hand, something else to do. And then I forget which one of my kids called me out on it. Like, Mommy, can't you just sit here and enjoy being with us? Why do you always have to do that too? Or something else.
Mm.
And I was like, I saw myself through their eyes and I went, geez, I got to stop that. And it was a process. Like I kind of felt like I had to sit on my hands just to not be like fidgety or something.
Yeah.
It's kind of nuts. It's nuts.
Yeah.
But I think for me, a lot of that stems from the anxiety of growing up with my bipolar narcissistic mom,
Mm.
because I I took it upon myself to be a people pleaser, and I didn't know that that was a term then, but I made it my responsibility to make sure that my mother was happy, which
Mm.
I could never do. So I always felt bad about myself because I attributed my own self-worth to my ability to make her happy, or to keep her in the Mary Poppins mode and keep Cruella de Vil from showing up, because that was what I equated the bipolarity as, you know, Disney characters, because I was a kid. And yeah, it just perpetuated itself throughout my entire life until the mid 40s. So I know you have some experience with that too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and if we look at that as like, you know, as that's the neuroses, that's the sort of the activity playing itself out that's covering up the need. Like when you were younger, you needed someone to be present and caring and mindful for you. You didn't need to be thrown in the role of being a performer and provider before you knew how to do it.
Or the caretaker of my mother. Right.
Or the caretaker of your mother. Yeah, I wound up in a similar kind of position with kind of volatile, unpredictable parents, both of them, and then also winding up being a caregiver for my brothers a lot of the time, and a lot of responsibility, a lot of pressure, and I feel like I also put a lot of pressure on myself as well to like I don't know, look good doing it, right? Like
to live
like,
up to it and make it look easy.
Live up to it, right? And then that translated it later into my relationship, where it was like, well, you know, it's like even if you're not happy truly deeply on the inside in your heart and your soul, and you know, like my philosophy is like your mind, your heart, your cunt. Like if they're not really truly happy, at least you can look like you are. Like
right.
you can get your hair done, you can get your nails done, you can like go out and do like the cute coupley looking things, but like you come home and you know when you're not soul satisfied, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had everybody convinced in my first marriage. They all thought we were like June Cleaver and, you know, the Leave It to Beaver family, you know, 2 kids in a nice house and a couple of cats. And it just looked like from the outside, like we had it all together. And inside, it was like a glass house. We were miserable.
Yeah, I
We were
wonder how
miserable.
many people live like that, right?
But, you know, my mom had always said to me that all relationships were compromises.
Mm,
And to a certain extent, she was right. But the way I understood it was that you couldn't satisfy all of the different parts of yourself simultaneously, that there were trade-offs. And so
yeah.
I felt like, okay, I've got a roof over my head. I've got 2 lovely kids. I have a good job. Everybody's healthy. The families all get along. So what? I'm lonely. So what? I never have sex. So what? I feel very starved for affection and starved for attention and desperately desolate. So what? I figured that was my trade-off. And, you know, you have to make a compromise. That's what I thought I was doing. And I didn't know I was entitled to ask for more.
Mm,
And so I suffered for 12 years through this marriage. And I believe also that my husband made the same choices,
right.
but from
Right.
his side of the coin, you know,
Right.
and I think that he didn't think that he was entitled to happier or that happier was even possible.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was something he was entitled to or not, I never discussed with him. So I'm just guessing, but I do know that afterwards he said that he didn't know that we were allowed to ask for more
Mm.
and thanked me for divorcing him because I saw it and he didn't. Interesting.
Quite mature, actually.
Interesting. Well, I got to a point where I realized that not only could I not breathe one more breath if I didn't get out, because I was abysmally miserable, but that I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want that relationship for my children. If I didn't want this
Yes.
type of marriage for my kids, I couldn't let them grow up thinking this was what it looked like.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
I agree.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. Okay, so another one. You wrote, in blazing into my 40s, I'm committing to myself all that is raw, wild, hard, and human. And you wrote, if we want love, we need to start with what's broken. That means looking inward and asking, why do I feel, want, run toward, or from the things that I do? And I thought, could there be anything more profound? I mean, we have to do that and self-examine because all of the happiness comes from inside.
Mm-hmm. I think my favorite discussion around happiness is by Mark Manson, who has written 2 books. I wasn't gonna
Oh, I read that with the orange cover.
Yeah, the subtle art of not giving a fuck was the
Yes,
first
yes, yes,
one.
yes. That was great. I read that one last
So
summer.
good. And the second one is
As a green cover, similar title.
similar title, yeah. But in one of them, and I think it's in the second one, he talks about the difference between mature happiness and like immature happiness. And mature happiness occurs around the development and the pursuit and care for our values. Whereas immature happiness is the dopamine high, and it revolves around getting ice cream, getting cookies, getting those
Right.
sort of temporary satisfactory things that we think that we want. And coming back to this sort of capitalist infiltration into our psyche, we have been very much conditioned to go after those little dopamine cookies instead of really learning to hold and sustain those deeper values. And the kind of happiness that's sustainable isn't like I wake up happy like every day. It's like I wake up with a vision, with a focus, and with an intention for my life and for who I want to be and how I want to move through the world.
Right.
And I work towards that. I hold that. And I know that inherently that feeds and nurtures genuine happiness.
Absolutely.
And some days it's going and having mimosas for brunch and
well, you can't
reading your book.
sustain it. I don't think it's healthy to sustain that level of intensity all the time.
No.
You have to kick back and have the mimosa and
absolutely. Or whatever that is for you, right?
Absolutely. Like, whatever that mimosa is for you, could be anything. Could be anything.
But overall, I think that they're like, I have a history of addiction, and I understand how utterly jacked up your dopamine can be. And, as a society, when you're constantly sort of feeding it, whether it's with social media, whether it's with kind of spontaneous spending or whatever it is that you do, we lose our ability to produce it over long term, which is what gives us the ability to sustain long-term goals. And those values need to be included in what those goals are, or we're going to keep reaching these plateaus where we think we should have achieved or created what we wanted, and we still don't get that level of satisfaction. That true, deep, mature level of satisfaction only comes from knowing who we are, what we value, what it's worth to us, and what we're willing to do for it.
Yeah.
And that's hard because you get to take apart everything that you've been told you're supposed to be and you're supposed to do and you're supposed to value, and like figure out what's actually fucking true for you. And it's scary, but it's so rewarding.
I've faced that exact question, that exact crossroads, had my life in the crosshairs of that a few times, and have actually had to make some tough choices, like this is where I'm headed, and I know that this isn't the right place, but what am I willing to give up, to compromise, to sacrifice, to dispense with in order to get myself where I want to go. And I remember everything happens to me in my therapist's office. And I remember looking at her and I'm like, I'm stuck. There's no choice. I'm stuck. And she's like, you're not stuck. You just don't like the choices that are available to you.
Great distinction.
Absolutely. It was so pivotal to me. And then I was just quiet for a minute and I'm like, the epiphany happened. Like, oh my God, I totally get it. I can see it all now. And then I just went home and did it. I mean, it wasn't easy, but it's the way it goes.
Well, and I think part of that, like for people in general, I know for me, like leaving the last relationship I was in, that I knew it wasn't just that he wasn't right for me. I wasn't right for him. Like you said with your husband, there was mutual gratitude to be like, oh, thank God we can stop doing this.
Yeah.
The grieving, I grieved so hard. It didn't matter that I knew I didn't want it. It didn't matter that I knew that I was doing the right thing for both of us. I still grieved. It's like we think that if it's the right thing, it's going to feel good all the time, but that's not true. And I think that's an uncommon sort of misconception among the spiritual sort of new age community, is that if you're making the right decision, you're always going to feel like you're in a state of joy. That's bullshit. You're not.
No, you might always feel like you're living in line with your integrity, but it's not always going to be joyful.
No.
And sometimes it could feel just downright shitty, but it's the right thing to do.
Right.
Absolutely. Just because you find that you're in your integrity and that what you're doing is bringing meaning into your life and maybe hopefully benefit other people on the planet and whatever else, not to tag too much stuff on it, but it's not
Right.
always going to feel good. It might feel like crap to do the right thing, to have the right conversation, to dig in.
Yeah.
You
And
have to.
ultimately you will feel better because it's like you cleansed out this wound. You made space for the truth. You stopped holding your breath, like
Right.
whatever it is. But that initial like risk that gets things moving usually fucking sucks.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's craziness. Absolute craziness. There's so many little moments in a lifetime where you face those little crossroads where you have to make that choice. And sometimes it's not like we're both moms, and sometimes you're making those choices for your kid, because that ultimately it'd be better for them, and it's just painful as hell getting yourselves there. Or
Mhm.
making a decision that the kid doesn't want to, and you're fighting. Oh, it's a
I
complicated life.
I love like I'm reading Women Who Run with Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and she's talking about the instinctive mother versus the too nice mother in it. And it just what you're just saying reminds me of that. It's like, yeah, the wolf mom, when she lets her pups out into the wilderness, she'll nip at them, she'll growl at them, she'll bear down on them when they're being dumb, so that she's the one to show them this is what's dangerous instead of letting them get gobbled
Eaten.
up by some predator, right?
Right.
And as a mother, I think it's such a fine balance between like keeping the wild alive, keeping those instincts alive, and showing them how to like socially interface. But those instincts, we need our instincts so bad. And like you said, if they're watching us go through life just people pleasing someone and like surrendering our soul to like make everything look nice and pretty, like they will not learn to listen to their instincts either. And
Absolutely. They'll grow
that,
up mistrusting themselves
yeah,
because what they see is
and
going to
what they
be
feel.
at conflict with what they're feeling inside. So nothing's going to make sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were quite a few times, you're the mom of a teenager. And if your teenager is happy with you all the time, you're doing something wrong. I teach high school kids, and I often, when I have to call home, so and so, your daughter's not doing any homework. Is there something going on that I should know about? And then I hear, the parent complain, I can't ever get her up, or she's always out with her boyfriend or whatever. And I'm like, well, you're the parent.
Hmm.
Put out some boundaries. Your job is to teach them how to do that. You
Yeah.
know, and well, but I think so many of the parents just want to be their kid's friend, or they're afraid that their kid's not going to like them, or they don't like to be yelled at by their kid or whatever. And I'm like, you're letting your 15-year-old run the show. Are they paying the mortgage too? Like that'd be good.
I went through that. I had a lot of guilt around parenting. I voluntarily gave up custody of my daughter for a few years when my drug addiction was at its absolute worst. And whereas I didn't
I
have
can't
any
imagine how hard that
intervention,
was.
it was really hard, but it was also the really, really right thing to do. It was like faced with one of those things. I can be selfish and pretend like I can be the person that she needs me to be, or I can be honest and give her to people who are actually able to meet her needs right now. And I can work this out of my system and come back and be a better mom. And that's what I did. But I felt so guilty about it. I wanted to be her friend. I wanted her to like me all the time.
Yeah.
And then by the time I realized that I was like, I'd given away too much ground, it was really hard to
To
get
pull
back.
that
Yeah,
back.
it's really hard to pull
How
back.
did you reestablish your relationship with her? Had you cut off contact while she was with other people? Or
No, she lived with her grandparents for a
okay.
while, and she would come and visit me occasionally on weekends, or I'd go up there on weekends. And I saw her regularly, sporadically, weekends and holidays and things during that time. There was about maybe a 2-year window, maybe a little bit less, between
Okay.
when I gave up custody of her to when I decided that I needed to get sober. And then she wound up living again with me, and on and off between me and her dad. Yeah.
Because from what I've seen on social media, you seem to have a pretty good relationship with her now.
A great relationship with her.
That's wonderful. I'm so happy for you both.
We went through some rough patches. She really tore my guts out when she was about 16 or 17, and I let her know where I stood and how I felt about it. And she was very mature when she came back around, and this is what she said to me, and I respect this so much. She said, "I'm not sorry that I did what I did because I needed to do it for my own experience, but I'm sorry that I went about it in the way that I did. I'm sorry that I hurt you."
Wow, that's huge.
And I looked at her and I said, "Good, because we weren't about to move forward until you said something."
Right.
Like, you're old enough to know what you did, and like, I shouldn't have to be the one. So baby,
Right. At 17, right. She should be able to own
17.
it.
And she did.
That's awesome.
And we moved forward from there.
That's
And
wonderful.
from many other places ever since, and like, she's such a good mom. I'm so proud of her. I was so worried. Unabashedly just terrified for her, because I was 18 when I became a mom. I wasn't ready. And like, she's 21 now. She was 20 when her daughter was born. And she's just stepped right into it. It's just beautiful.
That's
Beautiful thing
amazing.
to hold the body that my body made. The body that like is such a
Well,
trip.
the cool thing about human gestation is that the egg that made your granddaughter was inside your daughter's uterus when she was still in your uterus.
When I was still in my mother. I know. It's just like,
It's crazy.
right? We are actual like living Russian dolls. Like, women,
Absolutely.
we're fascinating. I love it.
That's totally amazing.
Men are fascinating too, but come on, you guys can't do that.
They can't.
You guys
No.
can't do that.
I was inside my grandmother, like no one else can say that but another woman,
Right.
because we have
Right.
all the eggs we're ever going to have, we have when we're born. They're just not mature.
Yeah. And then they drop off based on, the environmental experience. It's like you're like limiting down the possible realities that you can actually create from your body based on your environmental and emotional relational experiences. It's fascinating.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Amazing. I loved being pregnant. Oh my God. I felt like if I could build a pancreas, I could do anything.
I love that.
So I don't even know what a pancreas does, but well, I do now, but I didn't then. And I was just thrilled.
That's awesome.
Thrilled. This has been lovely.
Mm-hmm.
So normally I begin the interviews by asking these questions, and I totally was so excited to jump in with you that I completely forgot. But I would like to ask you these 6. I use them as icebreaker questions, but there was no ice to break. So, okay. So what 5 words would you use to describe yourself?
What did I tell you? I said honest, kind, intelligent, wicked, and warm.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome.
Did I get them?
Yeah. Well, that's what you wrote.
That's what I wrote.
But I think I would use very similar words to describe you. So I like that. That's dead on. That's very cool. Number 2, what is your favorite way to spend a day?
I like life simple. I get up in the morning, I make coffee. I have my coffee and journal ritual, do a little writing, maybe walk the dog, visit with clients, go to the hot springs.
We should talk about that. Oh my God.
Hot springs. Yes. Go to the hot springs. One of the main reasons I chose to live here. And either wind up, like on the tail end of that, like having dinner with a friend or visiting with my daughter and granddaughter, or maybe with a lover for the night.
Sounds heavenly.
Right?
Absolutely.
Frequently enough to be really satisfying.
Yeah. What else do you need?
Like all of it. All of it's like, oh yeah, that's pretty much my life.
That's very cool. Now, just a little curiosity. When you are writing in your journal, is it pen and paper in a book, or are you typing?
I do both. I try to get writing done in the morning first thing. I have a red leather bound journal right now. That was a gift for my 40th birthday, and pen to paper every morning. Try to do that first thing. I try to get that out before I even go to the electronics, but I've been kind of bad about that lately. And then when I don't have writer's block because I'm too busy like being interviewed or co-hosting awesome podcasts.
Yes, you are a co-host of a podcast.
Yeah, and that seems to have sort of taken over the space that I would normally be using to write like articles for either my website or Elephant Journal. So, creativity comes in waves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the podcast is called Blinded by the Light.
Yes.
And it explores the trauma associated with living and then leaving a cult. You gotta come back. We gotta talk about that.
Okay.
I was doing a little bit of reading on your website about that, and I was like, oh my God. Wow. That's a book. That's a book right there.
I know. Yeah. And I wrote a piece on Elephant Journal that's called How Growing Up in a Doomsday Cult Scarred Me for Life.
I'll have to read that.
And yeah, that's a good one, kind of just delving into it. And the podcast is phenomenal because we're getting to communicate with all these different people from different ages. Our most recent interview that's not live yet, but will be soon, is done with the co-hosts of the what's it called? The secular political. And their whole thing is about, separation of church and state. So I grew up with both of these guys, actually. One of them was an administrator for Church Universal and Triumphant at one point in time. And then there's me, and then there's my co-host, whose father is a split off faction leader, former member of Church Universal and Triumphant. So it's like all of these really strange threads like coming together. So I'm just kind of noticing the sort of outer creative fabric of my life right now. And I'm dedicated to addressing spiritual abuse. I think it's kind of the most insidious form of abuse, and it's the least understood, and yet it causes a lot of damage.
Sure.
So I'm grateful to be getting to do this podcast.
That's awesome. Probably doing a lot of healing all over the place yourself and the people who are listening, and helping other people even with different but similar. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. The cult mentality sort of runs congruent through any kind of fanatical system, including cultural systems. I mean, you can see it right now, like out in the QAnon
Sure.
mythology and a lot of different fundamentalist religions as well. I would group them all as cults, shamelessly.
Yeah, because they're just completely in control of individuality and freedom
Right.
of thought, as well as behavior, and total controlling. Gives me the creeps, actually. Okay.
Right? Just a little cold shiver just went down
Just
the
a
spine
little.
there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Your favorite childhood memory?
We took a trip to South Dakota. We went all the way to Mount Rushmore, and along the way we stopped at Devil's Tower, and we camped out in like these KOAs, and when we hiked, and it was just a super fun road trip. Like I just remember like stopping and taking pictures on the rocks, and my brother like crying and almost dying of dehydration.
Oh gosh. Yes, good times. Good times.
Well, Victor was just such a little whiny boy. It was like, we're like, drink, Victor. And he's like, I can't. It's like 117 degrees. It's like, just, charming memories of your family.
You turn into a pillar of dust if you don't drink.
Right. Like,
you're going to desiccate and smash into a million pieces.
Yes.
That's funny. Okay. What is your favorite meal?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I like to
That's a hard
cook.
one. Or
That's
one of
really
your favorite
hard.
meals, I should say.
One of my favorite meals. Okay, I'll give you like 3. So I make beef bourguignon. I
Mm.
decided I was going to do it after I saw Julia and Julia,
Yes, yes, yes. I love that
right?
movie where
I
she
was
wrecked
just
it the
like,
first time. And
yeah, I was
yeah.
like, I can do that. I'm gonna do that. And I do. I make a really great version of that. I make a ridiculous like eggplant parmesan. I do it with the
Ooh.
zucchini medallions instead of the eggplant. And I make my own marinara sauce with like sage and local pork sausage with like sage and red wine and like
Oh, now I'm starving. That
garlic
sounds
and
so
everything
good.
and all the layers of the cheese. And yeah, so I do those two. And I make a ridiculously decadent chocolate cake with raspberry layers and dark chocolate ganache
Oh
frosting.
my God.
Yeah, we call it the sexy disaster 'cause it
It's perfect. Is it layered? The
yeah, it's
raspberries and the
layered.
ganache?
The layers in the ganache. Yes.
Oh, that's like an
But
orgasm on a fork.
uh-huh, totally.
That's amazing. Oh God. Okay. Number 5. What one piece of advice? I gotta change my mind about that one. What one piece of advice would you give your younger self?
Slow down, breathe more, trust your body.
Good advice. Breathing is really so elementally essential to everything.
Right?
Amazing to me.
And therapeutic talk, it is the very first thing that changes when we experience either shock or shame, is we
Right.
change our breathing pathway. We freeze most of the time. And
I'm a
then,
breath holder.
yeah, if we don't learn to change that, like it will change like all of these other biochemical processes that run down off of how we're distributing and utilizing our oxygen supply.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it's the first thing that goes, it's the first thing we got to bring back.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I find myself when I'm really tense, I hold my breath and then I catch myself and I'm like, I'm making myself even more tense and crazy. I have to breathe. And as soon as you breathe and like slowly exhale, like the whole world rights itself.
Totally. The other thing that's super helpful for people like us who tend to do that is putting your feet up above your waist.
Is that why I do that instinctively? I always
Hmm.
put my feet up. I can't
Yeah.
sit with my feet down.
Yeah. Put your like 10, 20 minutes a day, like get your feet up above your waist. It takes the pressure off of the diaphragm. It allows everything to kind of slow down and it forces your blood flow to move in a different direction. It's really good if you get anxiety.
Huh. That makes a lot of sense. Brilliant. Okay, one more question. Where is it? What is one thing? This was a big one. What is the
Mm.
one thing you would most like to change about the world? Every time I ask this
Uh,
question, I think of that I'd like to teach the world to sing song from the 70s.
mm, yeah, if I could, yeah, one thing is to be more grief and trauma informed, for that to become much more of a commonplace conversation, for us to be more comfortable and more at ease in talking about our pain.
It's a beautiful thing. I think that there are so many things that I would like to change about the way we educate kids because they have, by and large, no sense of emotional intelligence whatsoever. And they don't know how to name what they're feeling. And they
Mm,
get very easily overwhelmed by it. And I think it's responsible for all sorts of behavioral malfunctions or behavioral mistakes. And they would more easily learn how to self course correct if they were more in touch with who they were.
yeah, what they were feeling.
I kind of look at that as my role as an English teacher. Because what do people write about? You know, what do you and I write about? We write about this. We write about how we feel. And I think most people, even if it's fiction, we're still writing about the human experience. And I always look for avenues to bring that out when what we read. I love how
love
I'm
that.
asking you questions and I'm answering them.
No, it's good though. And I mean, I want to hear that for teachers in particular, that is something that's part of their focus, because yeah, that's lacking in our education system.
Yeah.
I feel like that's lacking as a fundamental skill. Like most adults don't know how to do that. So they're not really teaching their kids. And regrettably, like I think it's leading to a fair amount of narcissistic dysfunction, where our accomplishments are becoming more and more externalized and less about our internal value. And
Oh, it was like that whole, the generation right before my kids came up with all of the participation trophies, and I remember seeing kids like my older friends' kids who were a little bit older than my kids were just like, our team came in last and we got like bloody noses and nobody played well. Why do I get a trophy? Like, this is just stupid. And the kids just, the whole thing became devalued and
Mhm.
meaningless because everybody was getting a trophy. So instead of like bolstering their self-esteem, which I think was the original goal, it completely backfired. And so you have all of these kids who grew up with empty praise, like
Yes.
Johnny draws a circle on the paper. Oh my God, you're the next Picasso. We got to hang this on the
Yeah.
table. We got to hang this on the fridge. And the kid's like, what are you, freaking nuts?
Like that's
You know,
horrible.
it's horrible. Yeah, I think we have to be
Yes.
truthful with these little people, and we have to teach them how to recognize what it is they're feeling and how to name it and how to talk about it without shame, so
Mhm.
that they are just better people and they're able to find their own happiness without asking other people's permission or without looking externally for other people to do it for them, which
Absolutely.
is the way I was raised.
Mhm.
I just always felt like it was somebody else's job. Like my mom always felt it was everybody else's job to make her happy. It wasn't her own. And even when a
Mm.
therapist would point blank and say, no, you're the one who's responsible, she didn't get it.
Mhm.
Anyway, on that note, this was so lovely, Justice. I'm so excited that you were able to be here with us and to join me on this new journey, the Permission to Heal podcast. I'm very hopeful that our growing audience will be inspired and motivated and comforted and feel like we spoke to them and their hearts and minds. And I'm so pleased that you were here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope people will continue to be honest and gentle with themselves and each other, because we're living in weird times.
We
Weird times
definitely are.
calls for weirdness. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. So how would listeners get in touch with you if they wanted to check you out, if they wanted to hire you to help them work through their trauma? How would they find you?
www.illuminationwithjustice.com.
That's easy. Okay. I will link that at the bottom of this podcast and in the show notes. And the videos of each of these episodes also live on the Permission to Heal YouTube channel. And I will certainly link all of the stuff there underneath the videos.
Nice. They can find me on Facebook as well. I keep a pretty active presence there.
It's true.
Always
You
happy
do.
to make new friends.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you so much. Have a happy Thanksgiving. I hope you enjoy the limited, smaller holiday
Thank you,
that
Marcy.
COVID
You
is giving us.
too. Yeah, you too. Take care of yourself. Everybody stay safe.
Absolutely. Everybody's, yeah, absolutely stay safe. Of course, this is going to air far after Thanksgiving, but we should still stay safe anyway.
We should stay safe.
Absolutely. And be thankful for the blessings that we have every day.
Always.
Always.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Justice.